And the next presentation is going to be Johannes Tintner. And he's going to talk about pitch oil production. Please, Johannes, the floor is all yours.
I guess this should work. I hope you all can see my full screen. So I would like to draw your attention on an intangible cultural heritage. If we focus on the World Wood Day, so with this global scale, it's a rather small scale tradition, but I would like to demonstrate that it's really strongly connected, and I would like to say even puzzled in a broader context. I liked a lot, as Ian mentioned in his presentation, that we often have this coexistence of this intangible cultural heritage, and especially also with pitch oil production, we have also these tangible remnants that we still can find in the landscape. And I think this makes it very interesting also in terms of preservation. First, to give you an overview about the distribution of this specific tradition, it's found in a linked area covering more or less the Czech Republic and the adjacent areas in southeastern Germany and northern Austria. And it's more or less linked with this geologically connected area of the Bohemian Mass with a granitic or gneissic bedrock, and we find there a lot of forest. And we can see also very clear relations to traditions in southern France, where we have, let's say, from a technological point of view, a very nearby tradition, but also other traditions in Fennoscandia, especially in Finland, and even in Western Turkey, we can find traditions that deliver a product that probably is very nearby to what has been produced here as well. General, the constitution of this setting, of this production, usually we have quite small hearths or kilns with about 1 cubic meter of rather small split, very resinous parts, mainly the hardwood of, in this case, very specifically pine. It's the only pine, Scots pine is the only pine species actually present there. The people also collected the nuts and the branches, so all the resinous parts that were not used otherwise were collected and stacked together on an uneven stone surface. At least most of the stones are either flat or shallow bowls, whereas this is the difference to the traditions that that existed in southern France, where these stones were really bowl-shaped with a stone with a tube through the stone on the bottom. Here we have flat stones, more or less flat stones, and they are carved with a grid. So we have scratched lines, very often in the shape of a leaf, to collect the pitch oil on the bottom of this kiln. Then the material was covered with sods, and at the end it's a pyrolytic process very near to what we can find to tar production or charcoal kilns. So we need any reduction of air supply, or actually oxygen supply. And here in this pitch oil production material, the wood is covered by sods. And aeration, it depends. We specifically investigated 3 different processes with 3 different people, and 2 of them used active aeration with wooden sticks, so they made holes into the sods, and the third one had far shallower salts, and therefore he did not make active aeration. So to give you also some pictures, here we can see the, let's say, the appearance of the product. So it appears very much to tar. What we can see also, if you smell the product, it's very clear that it's a pyrolysis process. Smell and taste and appearance is very much typical for tar. Here you can see the very fine split wood. As the whole process only uses about one cubic meter, you really have to make it very small scale so that you can stack together it as dense as possible. And on the basement here, you can see the basement with this rock. Actually, all the stones in this area are on granitic rock with these scratched leaf-like collection troughs. So what we have done, actually, we were measuring two things. On the one hand, we measured the temperature profile with two temperature probes on the basement, directly laying on the stone surface. And we collected the pitch oil, and we measured the composition of the pitch oil. And I want to show you this picture because it demonstrates a very clear typical specification of this process, because the temperature increase is very moderate. About 3 to 3.5 hours after the beginning. So about this line here, I hope you can see my cursor. So here the runoff of the pitch oil actually started. And on the basement, we have here still temperatures of slowly above 100 degrees, 100 to 200 degrees, not much more. It's clear that the bulk of the wood probably already got a little bit higher temperatures. So there is a certain part with really higher temperatures, but altogether, the temperature increase is very slow, and we can assume that this makes a very strong impact also on the results that we found on the chemical composition. And here we are. First, I want to show you a picture about the separation. We separated the pitch in the pitch oil, the volatile compounds and the non-volatile compounds, and we also compared the results with two further samples. One sample, it's displayed here with 2018. That was, and let's say, old pitch oil collected 2 years earlier. We made our investigations already in 2020. So the pitch oil of 2018 was stored in a pot for 2 years. And more or less at the same time, we also made a comparable research of temperature profiling on a charcoal kiln in southwestern Germany, so in Baden-Württemberg, and there charcoal production was actually the goal. So it was a far bigger kiln with about 35 to 40 cubic meters, and on the basement the producer made also a trough, and there charcoal tar was running out, and we collected that tar as well for comparison with our pitch oil. And what we can see that there is a certain heterogeneity, but we reach here a level typically of about 60% of non-volatile compounds, which is interestingly also comparable to the old one. I would have expected here that the volatile compounds would have left more because the pot was not densely closed somehow, but that was actually what we found. And then we made investigations by means of gas chromatography and mass spectroscopy, and then you get out a whole list of about 60 to 70 compounds, and then we group them and assign them either to the extractives of pine or to pyrolysis products. And for most of the compounds, that was more or less clear. And for us, somehow interesting or even unexpected that we have a very, very high amount of extractives. So more than 80% of the compounds were assignable to extractives of pine resin, actually, and only a very small amount was assignable directly to pyrolysis products, so pyrolytic compounds, pyrolysis oil. And this was also true for the old pitch oil from 2018, whereas a completely different picture was found in the tar running out of the charcoal kiln. I must say at this point very clearly that the charcoal kiln was fed mainly, or I think about 60 to 65% of input wood of that charcoal kiln was ash tree, because there was a lot of ash tree to be harvested, and only a very small amount of softwood at all, and only a neglectable amount of pine. So it's very clear that we cannot expect pine extractive, but we actually did not find a lot of extractives at all. So most of the compounds here were clearly pyrolysis products. The same actually is true also for the non-volatile compounds. Here the percentage of extractives is even a little bit higher, so even more than 90% were assignable to extractives. And again, the same is true for the old pitch oil, and definitely the opposite is true for the charcoal kiln tar. There is only one point I want to mention specifically here: the first drops. They were really completely different. I want to mention that in 2 slides. First, before that, I want to give the relation to comparable results that were found for pine tar produced in Norway in kilns arranged on a birch bark basis with Scots pine wood, but much bigger. So the typical tar production that we actually know from Fennoscandia, actually. And here also very high portions of resin extractives was actually found. Just to keep in mind that if you look at the material itself, the main appearance is the pyrolytic appearance. So you smell and you can see and you can taste that this is a pyrolysis product. But obviously, I must say that the portion of resin extractives here in 2002 found were a little bit less than in our results. But from a chemical point of view, actually, the product is more related to resin. As I mentioned, only the first drops, they were significantly different. They were dominated by levoglucosan, that is a pyrolysis product, very well known product of pyrolysis of cellulose, and phenanthroid, a polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon, and acetic acid. And the local name for this first drops in Austria is Heilsam. And this name, if we try to translate this, refers already to a very special medical value for the people. And I was told by the producers that this Heilsam commonly was actually even given for free to those people really needed that. So it had really a very specific value, because it's also from a chemical point of view, a very specific part of this pitch oil. So the majority of the compounds actually are extractives. derived from pine resin, and as such, the product actually is far nearer, is very near to the product gained by the resin tappers. Another handicraft that is also found in Austria, but in another region, mainly in the region, very small region in Austria, where black pine actually is growing, and resin tapping in Austria is strongly related to black pine, although we know that tapping activities on Scots pine in Germany, in Hungary, are also documented. Whereas the tradition of tar production, as I mentioned, from Western Turkey, is also using a lot of black pine. So here the product actually is there is a very interesting relation from a chemical point of view between these two traditions. From a technological point of view, it's clear that it's a pyrolysis product and very nearby to charcoal production. But we found really chemically a quite different composition. Although I must mention that the usage of the product, so both of tar and of the resin, are, among others, for medical purposes, and there actually the usage is very nearby. But chemically, the products differ substantially. So all in all, to conclude, we have here a Central European tradition on a rather close area in the center of Europe, but it's embedded in a broad European network of other non-wood forest products strongly related chemically to resin tapping, and a very strong relation to pine tar production, but very clear, pine tar production differs chemically a lot from birch tar production. So although even the appearance might be nearby, but chemically the products are very much different. There is the relation from a technological point of view to charcoal production, but all in all, we can say in its specific frame, it's a very unique tradition. And with this comment, I want to thank on the one hand, the pitch oil producers that were very kind, giving a lot of information and also giving us the possibility to do our research there, and also to my co-authors and colleagues who supported me a lot, and you a lot for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Johannes. And we have time for a quick question. If anybody wants to ask, do I see raised hands? Ian.
Yeah, not so much a question, but just an observation, really, that this is a really neat example of the sort of things that I find absolutely fascinating about woods and forests, and the technological advances and the uses of different processes and procedures, which we tend to be very blasé about in the petrochemical age, but we really don't, I think often we don't really understand how significant some of these processes were before you've got easy access to petrochemicals. And the sort of things that we've been hearing about, really interesting study. You find people using pyrolysis for extracting organic from peat and from different types of wood. And from a UK perspective, I'm very interested in the transference of knowledge on these processes and technologies. So we have very little evidence of things like tar production in the UK, but we have now managed to find one or two sites where it looks like people were bringing in the technology from Europe to experiment with making these incredibly valuable organic materials when you hadn't got access to oil type products and before distillation of coal products. So really interesting presentation. Thank you.
Maybe a quick answer on that. Actually, this question of knowledge transfer was really also for us the fascinating point. I think I discussed about 1 hour with Jiří Vojč, and actually this research was the starting point for us to think about for an application for a cost action exactly on that topic, because actually we have really a very clear gap in knowledge on how this knowledge transfer actually worked, and it's a fascinating topic.
Yeah, I mean, there are, we have books from the Victorian period where people are talking about this, but these days most people have forgotten those. So there's a lack of awareness amongst researchers and academics. And I'm sure there's a lot of literature in Germany and Austria. And then you have all the problems of translation, from an English point of view. I mean, I was taken around parts of Sweden by Lars Ostlund, who you may know, and shown their tar pits and tar kilns. And it was just fascinating. I'd never seen anything like it. Really interesting
Just
stuff.
a very small response. Actually, I would not have been able to do this publication without Jiří, because most of the publications about the Czech pitch production are in Czech. And as my Czech is very poor, it was absolutely more than supporting that he was joining the team. Elizabeth,
if it's a quick question, because we're running late.
Very quick, I just want to put your attention that also in Western Germany, in the Black Forest, pitch oil production was also in use in the history. So you might extend your geographical regions. Yes. When I was teaching there, there was a forest administration in the forestry. They still have produced this just to show it to the public. It's a Black Forest. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We need to move on. If I repeat, if there's any more comments, anything else, write it into the chat.